So I know people do a lot of really great things with parent programming, and it's all over the map. And what I'm going to share today is kind of, again, mostly maybe my interpretation or a way that I like to do it. That's kind of always been something for me professionally in camping, is understanding that everybody does things lots of different ways, and that there's probably no better or no worse. It's just how we all choose to do that. And hopefully maybe some things that I share with you today, most of which are stolen from other people or modified from other people. Uh, Certainly folks that come from camp conferences or ideas, both inside and outside of camp, but kind of put our own little twist on it. So let me make sure my little thing works here. Is it working? On and come on. There we go. I have a little fun little slide thing that I'm trying to work on. So family camp at North Star Reach, 3 days. You come in on a Friday evening. We do Saturday and go to about Sunday at noon. And one of the things that I've always found interesting about family camp is if you look at what I would say the progression that folks come in. You come in Friday after a long day of work for a lot of folks, and they're just scrambling to get packed and make the drive and get to camp and just find a way to kind of set in. And so what we find on Friday nights is unless people have some pre-established relationships and connections, it tends to be kind of very individual. We do our best to create a welcoming environment, but there's always so much chaos and kids are tired. But our Friday evenings, it's kind of focused on individual families and trying to go from the individual to the group and the community over the time of our weekend. Friday nights, we do some family introductions. We try and really role model and tone set, especially for those folks that are coming in brand new. And we think that's an important part, not only of the overall camp experience, but also of how we progress our parents and our caregivers through a process. Saturday morning, it's funny. So at North Star Reach, we have families share cabin space. So there could be 2, 3, 4 cabins or families in a cabin. And it's funny because on Friday night, they generally sit individually. On Saturday morning at breakfast, I think they feel very responsible to sit with the people that they spent the night with. So you kind of see 4 groups start to form a little bit there. It's all in Saturday morning is kind of, again, building and creating community. Our Saturday afternoons, after lunch, you start to see some intermixing, and it becomes a little more difficult to have family, to determine what family is which and which kids belong to which. Even though we do our best to have our families kind of stay together like that, it's great to see that growth and development. And we see that as an opportunity for our parents and caregivers to dig a little bit deeper, and I'll explain how that looks a little bit with our schedule. And then Sunday morning, it's more mixing, and that's where we really see and hear the connectedness take place. So here's kind of just a really quick look at what our family camps look like. Dinner on Friday night, like I said, family introductions, and then we do a campfire that is kind of where we do an orientation. Again, it's a lot of role modeling, some songs, some skits, because on Saturday night, we do another campfire where we really want our families to participate. And so we're trying to kind of show what it could look like and create opportunities for them to be involved. Saturday morning, we do a morning hike, an all group activity after breakfast, which is really kind of icebreakers and energy building. After that, we do age groups. And that's where, depending on what kids are at camp, infants to 1 and 2s or whatever it is. And so it's really broken down by age group. And that's, again, to build community within those groups of campers, but also to allow us then to relieve the parents of spending time with their kids for about an hour and a half to 2 hours. It kind of flexes by the time that lunch starts. Those age groups, again, are important in our growth line or growth of development of what we're looking at for building that community. Come back to lunch. Toes up time, thanks to our friend Lauren, who left that as a tradition here at North Star Reach instead of rest hour. Activities, kind of free choice in the afternoon. Dinner, we do a thing called Carnival Ants, which is a carnival art show, party, and a dance all crammed into one, which is kind of a high energy experience for our campers before our evening campfire. And then Sunday morning, more activities, brunch, and then closing. And what I wanted to kind of share was things that I think all lead to some of our parent programming. And on Friday night, it's family introductions. You know, that's the first opportunity that parents or caregivers have to kind of see who's in the room, right? Like, so we've done a couple different things there. We used to do big drawings on our windows in our dining hall with window markers or chalk. And one of the great things that came out of that was the fact that people's names were on there. And so it was like wearing a name tag, except you could kind of figure out who all the people in a family were and who owned what kids and what parents. This past year, we did some Mad Libs. We created giant sized, like the big Post-it sized paper that you stick on the wall, and used Mad Libs like that. So it was an opportunity for our families, again, to begin to understand who is kind of in the room. On Saturday, it was the age group, and that's what we're going to probably spend most of the time talking about today, is what that programming has looked like. The intention behind that is in the afternoon when we do our free choice activities, it's that it gives parents an opportunity to connect because they've already connected. We've already done the ice breaking. We've already given them opportunities to hopefully speak with just about all the other adults that are there. And it doesn't feel as awkward to go up and talk to someone else or learn from somebody else. In the evening, one of the things that we're going to try to create is a parent lounge. So it gives them another opportunity away, because for our Carnivardi time, it's in kind of an enclosed space that kids can kind of run around and be crazy, and they're kind of contained in there. And certainly our parents love to stay engaged and be a part of that. But we also wanted to create kind of a side space that if they wanted to, again, have some quiet time or have some further conversation, we could do that. And then Sunday morning, the same time around activities, we're also considering creating, again, a different space to give parents an opportunity to, it's challenge by choice, certainly, but to give them an opportunity to progress their relationships. So when we look at the time that age group programming or our parent and caregiver programming, this is kind of just a quick agenda of what we like to do during that time. We like to kind of welcome again and remind folks that what's the purpose of our time together? What are our goals? Why are we trying to get them to share and be a part of this greater community? For some folks, that's uncomfortable. But what I've found is that if you're able to provide some context of why we're doing some of the silly things that we're doing, folks are generally willing to kind of be a part of that. But we certainly practice challenge by choice. For us, we do our camp code, or our high five contract is safety, respect, love, challenge by choice, and have fun. And it's just something, again, that we try to remember with our parents and educate them, because the other pieces is their kids come to camp, they're getting an understanding of how we run our camp program. The next thing we go into is kind of who's in the room. So what's your story? And one of the things that for me I've found is if we spend too much time, you don't get to the other stuff. Folks love to tell their stories, and I think that's really important. But what I've kind of moved to, because sometimes we have 20 families, 24, 25 families here, is if you just take 2 minutes right there, that's almost an hour. So we really try to get them to give us kind of a framework, and we say, you know, who are you, where you're from, who are the kids, what brings you here in terms of what's your camper's condition or diagnosis, tell us a little bit about your experience. And we want them to kind of be able to do that in a quick way. We generally do this standing up, because that way people are willing to talk a little quicker because they're all standing. And I generally go first to kind of role model what that looks like. And then we throw out some of the thing like favorite ice cream or what's the best place you've ever been on vacation. Again, human interest icebreaker kind of stuff. But I think it's important because that provides everybody kind of a level playing ground, and they get to identify which people are like, oh, that's interesting, and I might want to learn a little more about that. The other thing that this is important for us and for me is this is kind of the last time they get to talk about their kids. That's one of the things that I've noticed, that our parents are so used to talking about their kids all the time. If you ask them any question, it will generally come back to something that relates to their kids. And we talk about the purpose of this is to focus on them. And we're not going to shame them or anything if they do talk about their kids, but the intentionality behind us spending this time together is to kind of reconnect them with social relationships. And what I hear from parents often is really the only people that understand are the people that come to camp, or they're people that are in the hospital, and you generally don't feel like talking to a whole lot of other people when you're in the hospital. So we really focus on this being questions directed towards parents being social. And I know that as an adult, even right now, I struggle with being social because I'm so focused on my family and so engaged with work all the time that kind of having those relationships, trying to figure out, is it worth investing in them? So we're really focused on, again, having them build that community together. We then get into kind of whatever activity that we're doing and do a closing with them, because we think that's great to get feedback and for them to be able to kind of process their experiences. So here are 5 samples of the types of programming that we've done with parents. Speed dating, right? You get 2 people or 2 groups lined up in a line, kind of like the photo that's on here, and ask questions. And so we've done either ors, this or that, would you rather. Another way of doing that is you can find a line, you can use a piece of webbing. Jim Kane's got some really great stuff about that, or find anything that's a mark on the half court of a basketball court or something like that. And you just have people either talk one-to-one about, would you prefer to have a personal chef or a chauffeur? Would you rather have a home cooked meal or go out to eat? Would you rather go to the beach or would you rather go to the mountains? There are millions and millions of questions that are out there that you can use, but it just gives people an opportunity to engage and, again, practice talking about things. And oftentimes folks are like, wow, that's a good question. I haven't thought about that in so long, because I'm so focused on our kids' experiences. Generally, I'd like to have some interaction and get a group feeling for the room and say, okay, well, who are all the people that wanted the chauffeur? And who are all the people that wanted to have a chef? And so it's always interesting because, again, it gives people, I think, a sense of temperature in the room. And a lot of times they're 50-50, but it's always fascinating when it's like 90-10 and you give the 10% an opportunity to share a little bit about why they chose what they chose. I just like to be engaging. And then you have people move. So, you know, one side of the room takes a step to their right, and then the next time the next group takes a step to their left. And so you're getting a new person every single time you're asking a question. I generally have them printed out and just kind of go through, and just depending on the energy of the room, I like to have way more questions than I would ever need. So I can see how people are engaged. As far as timing, again, that's something that's just kind of a game time decision, that you're seeing people that are talking and active. I generally let them talk for a little bit, because that's my whole goal there. You know, getting the questions answered is not necessarily what I'm trying to accomplish. It's getting people practiced and experienced in talking to one another. The Unity Project is something actually that I'm grateful for my mom, who shared this with me. It's a super quick video. I'm not sure if the sound's going to come through on this or not, but it's great because it's closed captions. I'm going to give you a sec just to watch this.
Unity consists of 32 poles arranged in a circle. Each of the poles has an identifier. And what people do is they take yarn from the center pole and they tie around each pole that they identify with.
I'm circling that my family's continent of origin is Europe. I live with a disability, a chronic illness.
Part of the fun was them tripping over each other and bumping into each other and having their lines cross. You know, it went from a big question mark to a huge success. As the days went on, it filled in and it was so thick that you could barely see the sky when you looked up through the center pole. When you look at Unity from far away, it's this massive structure. But when you start to go in to underneath the canopy, you can see each individual string. And when you can dissect Unity down to that single string, you realize that you're looking at a person. The poles they've chosen are their identity. And then you back up a little bit and you start to see who a lot of people are. And when you back up even further, you start to see humanity. And you see that even though we all have different experiences and we all identify in different ways and think in different ways, we are really one. you know, I'm just a person in the neighborhood, I'm just a mom, and I wanted to do something. If we can start from that place of common ground, we can have a much more productive conversation. I believe that as human beings, we have something in common with every other human being.
So the Unity project was just, again, this is one of those things I kind of stole from somebody else. We did not do 32 polls. We did 12 or 16. I can't remember how many it was. Super easy. You can buy some PVC from a local big box store and use some landscape stakes in the ground. It's really easy to install. We did not go as far as using pink yarn. We used yarn that we had at camp, and we did not paint them a beautiful shade of forest green. We simply used the white ones, and we had a space though on camp. And instead of doing identifiers that I'm from Central European or I live with a chronic illness, we tried to put the identifiers on each of those posts, things that would relate to parents. Things that, you know, I've spent over X amount of time in a hospital. I have sacrificed personal hopes or goals because of challenges that my family faces. Something that I'm most proud of. And we didn't do it quite with the way of having people as identifiers. It was more along the lines of telling your story. And how we actually did this is that when people entered, they would partner up with someone else, and that person would take the yarn and choose whichever post they wanted to go to. And as they wrapped it around, they would tell their partner that part of their story. Now, some folks like doing the back and forth, like they went to that one. Some folks alternated back and forth in terms of selecting which one of the posts they wanted to go to. But it gave people, again, an opportunity to have a one-on-one conversation and talk about themselves with someone else. We found a lot of success with it. It was cool over a number of weekends that we did this. We were able to continually add more and more yarn. Ours did not look quite as cool with that much yarn because we don't have that many people. But again, it's more about the metaphor and being able to talk about how families are connected. And during our closing or our processing piece, people really linked to the idea of the fact that it showed a web of connectedness and the idea that people were able to support each other. And we really liked that kind of metaphor that it went over the course of the weekend. People would refer back to some of those questions. And it also created opportunity, because this was permanently installed, that we had a couple parents go back and do it again with another person. So again, it was kind of that challenge by choice. It gave them an opportunity to use a tool that was there rather than having to come up with things to talk about kind of on their own. I will say that we've used this with campers too. We did it with a teen program, and it was really fascinating. Again, different kinds of questions or different kinds of identifiers that we used on there. And a local school district actually did this at their high school with classes at the beginning of the year. So this is, I think, got a lot of different uses. We've got a link to it there. They used to have a free guide. They now charge money for it, but I think probably with what I've shared with you, you can figure out how to do it at your own camp. But it was something that was really successful, and I'm grateful that we've done it in the past, and I'm sure we're going to bring this back. Social networking, again, pretty simple. I learned this from Bob Ditter, who did it with campers, and we applied it simply with parents. It's taking a paper plate and putting hours of the day on the clock, and people go around and sign up for appointments at every single hour. Now, that's not during the day. That's the time that you have for your parent programming or your caregiver programming. But one of the things that I found after the first time was you have to keep people from trying to be efficient on their own, because they will go around and try and sign up as many people in as short a time as possible, and it doesn't actually get people to fill out every single one, and then you get like doubles and triples, and it's all kind of crazy, which as a facilitator you figure out how to make happen. But generally it's saying, okay, go find a 12 o'clock, and I write on mine that I'm going to meet with Rich, and Rich writes on his that he's going to meet with Patrick. And then we tell everybody to go find another one to do at 1 o'clock, and then to do at 2 o'clock, and to do at 3 o'clock. Very similar to kind of like the speed dating. It's the idea of asking questions and creating almost a facilitated or forced way for people to have conversations. Best meal ever, favorite performance. That could be theater, that could be a concert that they might have gone to. Again, when I go back to, as I say, it can't be your kid in the school play, because we all know that's your total favorite performance. What's something outside of that that may be back in your life? I always tell a story about I had a steak at a place in a Superior Steakhouse in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, that I can taste right now just by mentioning it. It's flat out the best steak I ever had in my life. And so I think these are always opportunities for you to engage and share a little bit about your life, because I think parents like that piece. Caregivers like to hear a little bit about your story as well. And it builds community, builds trust, and again, provides some really great role modeling. Again, just a huge list of questions. In this case, you need 12, but again, I like to have more than that because I like to see how the room is. One of the things that I've found is that I rarely stop people, or I actually have to stop people from talking. Rarely do I have to go, oh, they're not talking enough. If you just let them go, I think we could ask one question and people would talk for 10 minutes. So I think people have really enjoyed this and done a great job. So after your first one, you move on to the next appointment. So 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock. I've actually rarely ever gotten through all 12 in the time that I've had. But the great thing is that then they have some pre-arranged people that they need to meet with and carry with them throughout the rest of the weekend. This was one that we came up with, I think about a year ago or so. We're trying again to, how do we do the same thing in a different way? And my son had a addiction for a while to playing Spot It. And so we thought that might be a cool way. And basically what we did is we sat down one night and came up with a question that related to every single symbol. If you didn't know, there's 57 symbols in a Spot It deck. And every card, if you've not played before, has one match for every other, every 2 cards has at least one match. There's an incredible mathematical problem that somebody figured out on how to make that happen. But we went through and how basically what happens is everybody gets a card, they go up to a person and they simply try and figure out between the 2 of them which one of the symbols matches. And then that's going to give them a guide to what question they're going to ask. We didn't think about it in time, but we could project the questions up on a wall, or you could have them written in some way. We just gave everybody a piece of paper that they could refer to. Once they've asked and answered their question and shared that time, they switch cards and then go to another person. So here's just an example of the different questions that we came up with. So, an anchor, what anchors you in life? A 4-leaf clover, what are you going to do when you win the lottery? Taxi, what's your best travel mishap? A pencil, is there a time in your life you want to erase? So we tried to, again, live in the metaphorical world a little bit. Again, we found that a lot of families had never played Spot It, so they thought that was cool, being able to do it. And it was something I was like, I don't know how this is going to work, but I think it's been one of our more successful ones. And then we have Spot It cards around camp for when families want to kind of just play and enjoy their time together. So this year we suspended our on-site program, as I think probably many of you have, as you looked at, but we ran some virtual family camps. And one of the things that we heard was parents still wanted to spend that time together. So figuring out how do we give parents and caregivers this interactive community connectedness experience. So we came up with staying connected in a time of social distancing. And essentially what we did is tried to go through and figure out what would be all the different kind of social media apps that people could use and then relate to a question. So Cocoon apparently is like a family Facebook. Some people from Facebook bailed and started their own, but it's all less craziness of Facebook and really intended without all the ads and all the other stuff that you control it. But it was a space for family. So this was just the thing that we would use to say, tell us a little bit about your family. Do the 2-minute or the 10-minute conversation in 2 minutes. Twitter, what's been your mantra? And this was early on for us in the stay-at-home orders here in Michigan. And so what is it that you've been kind of living by? And I'll tell you, one of our families introduced me to one of the funniest things. If you've not seen it, you should Google seagulls, stop it now. It's bad lip reading from Star Wars. You will literally fall off your chair. But this mom, that was like her key phrase that her husband could say, seagulls, stop it now. And it would kind of bring her back when she was in some crazy part of chaos. It was something that she used. And so that was her mantra. Other folks were like, remember everybody's healthy, or I mean, whatever it was. But again, it gave people an opportunity to share a little bit about how they had been kind of surviving. I'm going to go through these kind of quick. TikTok, what's been your biggest frustration? And then after the first one, I realized that it had to be a non-political frustration because that wasn't a fun conversation the first time. But again, in my world, I've never seen TikTok, but I think it's just kind of stuff over and over and over again. So what has been frustrating for you? Snapchat, what's been your go-to coping skill? And one of the moms says, sometimes I go to the garage and have a beer by myself. And I was like, I get it. My bourbon has gone down a little bit more than normal. So again, I think all of these are very human experiences, and it gives parents an opportunity to understand that there's folks just like them having similar experiences out there. Instagram, what's something that you're proud of? How has your family been enduring this time? Facebook, what have you done to stay connected? And for folks, they said that's been a struggle, especially folks that have immunocompromised kids, that they're saying, you know, people just don't understand the fear that we have and why we want people to wear masks and why we want folks to stay out of the grocery stores or to wash their hands or to do all those things. It's been interesting. So many of our families have said, you know, the quarantine's not really been a big deal because we do this all the time. This is what our experience is. It's finally nice that others have been able to understand what it's like to be kind of fearful of the world around you. YouTube, what's been your biggest distraction? For me, it turned into Seagulls Stop It Now. I lost about 3 days watching that. Yelp, what's been the worst part of this experience? You know, what do you rate as no stars? What's been that biggest challenge? On the other hand, Pinterest, what's been the best part? What is something that you think you have that you could share with someone else? Reddit, what do you wish you had help with? And LinkedIn, what's something you've learned from someone else?